Testing, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. All right, folks, finally. So I'm going to be talking about protein today, and I just want to give some insight into protein. This first piece is just going to be talking about what protein is, its basic functions, and also how it digests in the body. So first things first, protein is one of the 3 macronutrients. We've heard this before. There are 3. It is protein, carbs, and fats. Simple enough, right? Yes, it is. So why do we need protein? Well, protein breaks down into amino acids. And amino acids can be used for 3 main things. It can be used for immediate energy, so it can be used for energy, but it takes time to break down, and it's not our first source of getting energy. It can break down into building muscle, so amino acids can then travel to build and repair muscles, which is why people say, hey, get your protein in after you do a weightlifting workout or any type of workout. And then finally, it is used for stored energy. So it can store into your fat cells for later use. So those are the 3 ways that we use amino acids. So why are people so OCD about protein? Certain amino acids cannot be created in the body. There are 2 types of amino acids. There are what people call essential amino acids, and then there's also non-essential. So essential amino acids are amino acids that our body just can't typically produce. We pretty much have to get it through foods, and so those are things that you eat in different protein sources. There are some carbs that have amino acids, things like that. And then there are non-essential amino acids. They're non-essential not because we don't need them, but because we actually create them in our own bodies, and we don't have to worry about getting them from food sources. So those things, they happen on their own. Our body produces them. If our body is functioning well, it'll produce them. So the essential amino acids are really key because they do help build muscle, repair muscle, help a little bit with energy and whatnot. And I think the biggest challenge is that there are 9 essential amino acids out there that are not created necessarily by the body, that we can only get from food. And certain proteins, especially vegetable proteins, do not have all 9. So what does that mean? It means that when you hear about a lot of vegans and vegetarians who don't eat enough protein from these essential sources, they then struggle with certain challenges. Let's take a pause. Pause. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay, so why is it crucial to eat protein at certain times? Well, it depends on when you need protein. So if you need protein and you haven't eaten all day and you're really, really hungry, you haven't had any carbs, what happens is your body says,
oh, you haven't eaten all day? Well, I'm going to eat up all the carbs I can possibly get my hands on, and then I'm gonna hit your protein sources next, aka your muscles.
So when you hear about people who are losing their muscle mass, it's because they used up all the carbs, or their body said, I'm only taking up this many carb sources. And what I mean by carbs really is the simple sugars that your body breaks it down to. So it's like, oh, I already used up all of those carb energy sources, those simple sugars, and where am I going next? It doesn't go to your fat, it goes to your muscles.
So it's like, oh, muscles, hi, those amino acids, let me holler at those. I'm gonna use those.
So when you hear about people losing their muscle mass, it is mainly because their carb sources have gone up, have been used up, and then it goes and it tackles those other sources, aka amino acids in your muscles, because it's just like, this is not essential right now. For some reason, it doesn't go towards the fats as easily. In fact, the fat cells are used to protect our organs, and so that ends up being the body's first priority. Protect the organs and go towards things that are technically non-essential, which are muscles, sadly enough. So then the last thing is, say you've been eating a lot. You might have been eating a lot of protein, eating really good things, but at the end of the day, it's calories in versus calories burned. So what happens? You have so much protein in your body. Guess what it does? It says, hey, I don't really need you right now. There's no muscles we need to really build or repair, and there's no, we don't need you for immediate energy because we haven't been doing enough and we haven't been expending a lot of energy. So guess what? We're gonna store away until further notice, and that's when it will store away.
Pausing some more.
Okay, so the other thing about protein, obviously, is calories, right? So what are protein calories? So for protein, there are 4 calories per gram. 4. So every gram of protein you eat has 4 calories. For carbs, there are 4 calories per gram as well. For alcohol, you know that thing that you drink, there are 7 calories per gram. And then for fat, there are actually 9 calories per gram. So you can see that calories in the protein and carbs are the lowest, and that you can eat technically more of them, because they're not as high of a caloric intake. And I bet you didn't know that about the alcohol, did you? No, you probably didn't. Anyway, so the cool thing is, say that like classic 4 ounces of chicken, which is usually about the size of your palm, give or take, depending on how big your palm is.
What is it?
This size ends up being about 25 to 30 grams of protein. So when you think about that, if you say it's on the higher end, like 30 grams of protein, 30 grams times 4 calories is about 120 calories. Did I get my math right? Yes, 120 calories with that piece of chicken. So you can see it actually ends up being a good amount and not that high in calories, I think. Okay, so now I want to talk about how protein digests in the body. So protein actually starts up here in the chest, no, not in the chest, but in the stomach. And what it does is it breaks down into peptides and all this other fancy stuff. Who cares? We do care, but you don't care about that right now. It starts breaking down in the stomach. And believe it or not, protein breaks down second out of those 3 macros. So in terms of which one gets broken down the fastest, carbs break down first, and they break down the fastest. Why? Because the body understands that we need it for energy. So it understands it's an energy source, it will break it down first, and will get to all the channels it needs to help fuel you up. The next thing that breaks down is actually protein. Protein can digest pretty slowly, but there's something very special about protein that the other sources technically don't do in the biggest way compared to protein. And then the last thing to digest is actually fat. So fats digest really slowly, and that's why when you eat those bags of nuts or you eat a ton of avocado, you will not feel hungry for a while because fats take a really long time to digest in our stomach. So what happens when you eat protein? So it starts in the stomach, right? And you need to have HCl to break it down. If we have low stomach acid, that means our body's gonna really struggle to really break it down and travel down to everywhere else. So that's why people recommend having an apple cider vinegar in the morning, or having lemon water in the morning, or having it with certain meals that are more protein heavy, because we need to break it down. So the other thing that's really cool about protein that I love is it causes thermogenesis. Really fancy ass name for it. Actually raises, your body has to use up a lot of calories to break it down because it is so dense and it needs a lot to break down. Your body goes into using more calories to break down that protein. So it actually helps to kind of boost up your metabolism a little bit so that it can help break down that protein. So that's why I personally eat eggs in the morning, because I notice that when I start off my morning with some eggs or a protein source, my body will say,
ooh, okay, I'm gonna wake up now.
and then I can actually eat more throughout the day, depending on how I'm feeling too. But it helps me to open up the channels to be able to eat more. If I start off my day with something a little bit more heavy, that's not protein or not protein based, I just find that I end up not being able to eat as much as I want to. So protein kind of for me opens up the floodgates to be like, okay, you can eat. So I had to do a little bit more digging. What I gathered was that each macronutrient requires a certain amount of energy to break down, which I've said before. But in particular, protein needs about 4 times more the amount to break down. Fats take the littlest amount of energy to break down, believe it or not, followed by carbs just by a couple percentages, and then protein needs 4 times the amount to break down. When you think about how little the amount of calories you can get in protein, this is why it's such a great source to eat, because you're pretty much burning off what you're eating. It's fantastic. Eat. So that's personally for me. So yes, the cool thing is that it will decrease your appetite because it is so, it takes so much time to break down. So it will decrease your appetite, but then over time it will be using up a lot more calories to break down the intensity of that food source. So that's really cool about digesting. So the key things here is HCl is needed to break it down. So if you don't have enough, that can be a big challenge. And then you will use up a ton of energy trying to break down that protein, and you'll decrease your appetite. So that's why people who go on higher protein diets tend to lose weight more than others. So here's the funny thing. I hear a lot of people say, I eat all the time, I'm still hungry. Carbs break down so fast and they don't fill you up for long enough. And so we need it for energy, so your body's like, okay, I'll break it down, I'll break it down. Proteins kind of slow that down, and so that's why you may feel hungry on a high carb diet versus on a high protein diet. So that's why some people feel hungry still after eating donuts and all that stuff, because the reality of it is that carbs break down quickly, so you're gonna be hungry again. But protein doesn't break down that fast, so it kind of forces you to slow it down. Carbs break down into sugar. When in excess, they actually feed the evil little monsters in our bacteria systems, aka yeast. Remember, protein breaks down into amino acids first. Therefore, it doesn't turn into sugar right away, which prevents bacteria overgrowth and inhibits those puppies from ever growing out. You may still be hungry because those evil monsters are hungry. Protein actually inhibits those puppies from actually growing. Thank you folks for all watching. I hope you guys had fun watching this video, and stay tuned for my personal experience with protein, my challenges that I've experienced, and what I found to be my secret sauce in making a high protein diet work for me. Talk to you guys soon. Bye!